Tonight, this evening, the national chairman of the governing National Democratic Congress, Asiedu Nketia, is calling for the removal of the Electoral Commission's top leadership, accusing them of gross incompetence and electoral mismanagement. While speaking on PM Express, he described the current EC leadership as unfit for purpose, citing what he described as repeated failures to conduct credible elections. He warned that persistent electoral stalemates point to either negligence or outright inability to perform their institutional duties.
Everything has been removed. So there is overwhelming evidence that this commission is not fit for purpose. And if any serious country will want to maintain this type of electoral commission, then I don't know what the country is about.
So there will be a change at the EC leadership?
There has to be a change.
Jimensa must go?
Yes, I think the three top leadership must all go.
So that will be the chairperson herself and her two deputies.
They must all go. They have mismanaged the commission so badly.
Their positions, though, are positions protected under the Constitution. They're guaranteed tenure.
But the Constitution has given us the path to remove them. And that is what is happening to the Supreme Court. You may be guaranteed, but there is no position under our Constitution. There is no appointee or state functionary who cannot be removed under this Constitution. There's a procedure of removing the president. There's a procedure of removing Speaker of Parliament. That's why there's a procedure for removing Chief Justice. Everybody has, a way of holding them accountable. Because if you make an appointee or a state functionary who is not accountable to anybody, there's no way to hold them to check, then you breed a monster. And so when you look through the Constitution, everybody in the Constitution can be changed.
But a senior research officer at the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, Dr. Kojo Asante, has stated that such remarks from top party officials are likely to influence public perceptions, fueling concerns about political bias or attempts to forcefully remove leadership for partisan interest.
It's clear that, where you have a case where he happens to be the chairman of the governing party, and that if there was to be any process triggered, for the removal of the leadership of the EC, it will fall in the lap of the president, who, by constitutional dictate, has to forward it to the Chief Justice, and the process will be picked up from there. Once that you get these kinds of statements from somebody high up in the party like him, it would definitely impact on public perceptions about political bias or political interest in sort of pushing out the leadership. So I think that's the challenge that I would think that, given the challenges that he knows with the way people might perceive the issue of political interference, that these desires will be kept quiet. I mean, at the end, there is a process. If anybody, and remember, he's also a citizen of Ghana, if anybody felt that the leadership of the Electoral Commission has not performed their responsibilities, that they need to leave, there is a process for doing that. So his only problem is that he just happens to be in a position where adding his voice and calling for this, create a perception that this anything that happens will be induced, and this is something that is always very difficult to explain away or to separate the issues about genuine misperformance or deficit in the way in which the leadership has conducted themselves. So I think that's the problem, that when he adds his voice, this is the problem that it creates.
Meanwhile, Programs Director for Election Security at the Center for Democratic Development, Paul Mensah Brampa, has added his voice to the ongoing debate over the proposal. Let's listen to him.
Every opposition political party accuses institutions who have roles to play in our elections. And this is not unique to what we witnessed ahead of the 2024 elections, with more threats and also campaign statements purporting to take actions against several state leadership of state institutions when the opposition won power. And I was just developing a blog post, and I titled it "Campaign Promises and Threats Comes to Fruition." So it's becoming a pattern that if we are not careful and we encourage that, we may not have any tenure or safety for any of our major institutions who play one or other role in our electoral process. So I see this as a fulfillment of campaign promises and threats.
The chairman makes the argument that there are processes in place to remove them, and he cited the ongoing process or inquiry into the suspension of the Chief Justice as an example. You say that it appears we don't have, or we don't want to have, a more permanent approach to leadership of these institutions, but that's why
I made an example of what happened in Mampong. If the people who were protesting to canvass for their own to be nominated and appointed as municipal chief executive had done that lobby without the public getting to know their intention of ethnicity dimension of it.
Well, let's broaden the conversation here on the pulse and bring in Kwame Bochio. He's joining us via Zoom. He is the spokesperson actually for the CPP as we explore the conversation further. I appreciate your time here on the pulse. I just want to get your initial reaction as key stakeholders in the previous election. What's your analysis of the EC's performance?
I'm sorry. Good afternoon. I would say that aside from being the General Secretary of the CPP, I also did my national service with the Electoral Commission, the Giraffe Parliament district in 2004. So I do have some knowledge of the inner workings of the Electoral Commission. And it is not an easy job. And of course, I recognize that there have been various petitions stemming all the way from 2020 regarding the Ayawasu West election, the SAL issue, and many other events. And as to whether these fall under the grounds for removal under Article 146, which is stated misbehavior and incompetency, I believe it's something that will be in the domain of the authorities who will be handling the petition. However, from my point of view, I would say that let's wait for that outcome, because from our dealing with the Electoral Commission in the last election, there were various calls for the auditing of the electoral register. We expressed our opinion on it that we do not believe there is a problem with the register. And indeed, it is the same register that has put the current government in power. If indeed, if there had been a flawed register, that would be a substantial issue that we would have to deal with now. But from everything that has happened, we feel that bar Ablikuma North, the election has been run successfully. This is not the first time that we've had electoral issues. I think we had some minor issues with the same constituency some years ago in the Ronga-Hafu region. So from our point of view, we are aware of the various problems that have happened with the Electoral Commission. right from Ayawa, So West, and others. But as to whether they fall under grounds for removal, we would say that we would let the committee do its work. But for now, we do not think that until we see further evidence, because I also speak with an additional hat as a legal practitioner. And I think that all these things will be based on the evidence that will be brought to fore. Whether the various infractions being complained of can be laid at the doorstep of the Electoral Commission is what will determine whether the Electoral Commissioner and the two deputies should be removed or not. We are aware of the infractions. They are there for everyone to see. Everyone can take judicial notice. They are not things to be denied. However, the fact that there have been infractions does not mean that the Electoral Commissioner was negligent in performing her duties or willfully caused those infractions. But from where we stand, we have seen those infractions. We do not see any reason to lay it at the feet of the Electoral Commission. However, that will depend on the evidence that will come out. If the evidence comes out and we realize that indeed it can be substantially laid at their feet, then we just have to support the court with their removal. But for now, we, out of an abundance of caution, we just want to allow the committee to do their work. And others have stated that given the heavy weight of Honorable Asiedu Nketia, he shouldn't have voted to this. But I believe that under Article 21, he's entitled to freedom of speech. The same way I, as a General Secretary, am entitled to give my opinion on the matter. The fact that we are not in power does not mean that my opinion will carry less weight than Mr. Asiedu Nketia's own. So he has expressed his opinion, and rightfully so. But I would say that for now, with the facts we have, unless we get further evidence, we do not think that the Electoral Commission should do it.
Now, we cannot deny the fact that there are political undertones to this whole issue. We saw a similar change of regime when the NPP took over power and then Charlotte Osei had to go. Now we're expecting same with Jean Mensah. From your angle, what do you feel about the political implications of this?
The political implications they are not good, because if you look at all our institutions, whenever a new party takes power, almost all the officials of almost every institution, sometimes even goes ahead to quasi-public-private institutions that are not totally public. It is not a good thing, but the situation is we can only use the Constitution as it stands now. And there's a perception that some of these decisions may be colored by political lenses. And it works both ways, because there's a complaint that whenever a new party comes, they remove the current heads and put in their own heads. However, what we forget is that those that they are removing were put there by their predecessors, who removed those who were before them. So it becomes an endless cycle. And I believe that until this constitutional issue is dealt with, we'll keep on having this. It is undeniable that it is a political issue. Almost everything in this country now has become political. I suppose because of the nature of our constitution, you cannot blame the citizenry, you cannot blame the politician. It's just the nature of our constitution. The executive has large appointing powers, and they can appoint and remove or even advise on the removal. And of course, whoever is put in a position by the executive, as much as the executive may put them there in the interest of transparency and for a good job to be done, the perception that whoever is put them, we want to do the bidding of whoever appointed them is also there. But that is not always the case. You can have some being appointed. For example, you have the OSP, for example, who was appointed by the previous regime, but has been maintained by the current regime. So in that sense, I suppose there's no perception of bias there. However, that does not mean that any perception of bias can be substantiated against the Electoral Commissioner or any other official who is being removed. And this cycle will continue. It is political, it is a fact, it is not such a good thing, but then the removing authorities to have their reasons because they may not trust maybe the future actions. They may not be based on current actions, but they may not trust the future actions of these appointees. And so until the constitution is changed, and I hope the Constitutional Review Committee takes a good look at this, until it is changed, we are going to have these political decisions in our institutions for a long time to come.
Stay with me. I'll come back to you. Just speak your thoughts on what key changes you propose to the Constitution to protect key roles like the Electoral Commission. But let me bring in the Deputy General Secretary of the NPP, Haruna Mohammed. We appreciate your time here on The Pulse. I just want to get your brief reaction as a political party. Are you satisfied with the performance of the Electoral Commission?
Yes, I'm very much satisfied with the performance of the Electoral Commission from the onset to date.
Hearing from the chairman of the NDC, I've noticed that indeed there may be troubled times ahead for leadership for the Electoral Commission. I want to pick your thoughts on this as a political party.
That is his opinion on those persons. It's not based on his assessment of their work, because they have already have a predetermined mindset for these officers before they came to power. But if you want to ask yourself, in the last election, all the performance of the Electoral Commission's work, even in 2020, there was no any budgetary allocation from elsewhere. We did not ask for any assistance from any other foreign agency in terms of performance of the Electoral Commission's function in terms of budget. You've also checked that relative to other functions or other works within the election period, you saw that there has been very minimal disagreement in terms of the data that has been used in terms of register. You go, you are disallowed the process, the timing, and all that. Yes, there has been very minimal in terms of that. So the Electoral Commission has, over time, increased their efficiency and effectiveness in terms of the discharge of their duties. But not entirely to say that they are perfect. There's no any perfect institution in the world.
But there are political undertones to this. You would agree with me that it will be quite difficult for you to cry foul, especially because of your administration instigated the removal of Charlotte Osei. What's your thoughts about protecting key institutional heads, especially with that of the Electoral Commission?
We did not just remove the Electoral Commissioner. There were some particular procurement breaches, which was grounded in law, and you ask yourself whether it did happen. There were so many things that went into it, and these were factors of the law and the processes that have been broken. So if procurement issues have come up, and in fact it has been breaches of those particular, and if you quite remember, the petitions and what have you did not come from members of the New Patriotic Party. It came from the same commission, members of the commission. So these are different situations and scenarios that we are looking at. But we don't want to draw mad politics into this. If they feel that because we had followed a certain process and this was because of breaches, they should go and look for anything that they want to look for, because they have already made their mind to send them off. But by me, from the objective point of view, I'm very certain that the Electoral Commission successfully over the period, not later to this, have performed creditably. And I believe that even in the state of Africa, West Africa, people are clapping for Ghana in terms of us being able to distinguish ourselves in terms of electoral process, dispute management, and also the outcomes of elections in Africa.
As a political party, would you agree with proposals that the Constitution ought to be amended to protect key institutions from political interference? For example, the Electoral Commission.
Very well. If we want to strengthen key institutions, and by doing such amendment, what is wrong with that? If it is actually intended to protect independent institutions and will do what is right, I don't think that I would be speaking against such processes.
Stay with me. Let me just bring in Mr. Kwame as we look at the legal implications of this. What will it take for us to make those changes in our constitution, for example, to protect key state institutions, for example, like the Electoral Commission, from the legal point of view?
Point of view, the constitution has to be reviewed to change the article on the appointment of the Electoral Commission, so that he or she will not be appointed by the executive, but we could find other ways of appointing them. I would say that various jurisdictions have various ways of appointing them. Some of them you have various councils. I think in Kenya and other places, in some of the institutions, you have members of such institutions being given the right to vote for who should head that institution. With regards to the Electoral Commission, there are many ways that we could go around it. Maybe we could look at various ways, such as getting, probably, you could say maybe the Council of State, for example. The Council of State can recommend somebody to be the Electoral Commissioner, so that it won't be solely the remit of the executive. And then after that, you can have whoever is nominated submitted to various interested parties. I mean, the CSO. It should be a rigorous activity, so that it will not look like there's any political interference. But unfortunately, in our system as it is, almost every position is appointed by the executive. Almost every high position is appointed by the executive. So you cannot really pinpoint any time in the past where we had another way of appointing these high officials. But a starting point maybe having the various registered political parties in good standing as one body, having the Council of State as one body, and then various CSOs, more or less forming a certain non-executive or non-judicial, non-legislative body, a body that will not be related to either the executive legislature or judiciary, formed in order to propose an electoral commissioner. And these people, they can even invite submissions for those interested in the position. And then you can have a number of people, and these council members can then vote as to who should be the electoral commissioner. And then aside that, when it comes to the removal to, at the moment, it's by petition to the president, who will then refer it to the Chief Justice. But maybe, and also, it can go beyond that, because that is under Article 146. However, if you look at Article 151 on the removal of judicial officers, the Electoral Commissioner is akin to a Court of Appeal judge. So it's in that high office under 146. However, if you look at judicial officers per se under 151, you need 2/3 of the members to vote for their removal. So if we could have a combination of 146 and 151 when it comes to removal of such public officers, it will help, because then it is not in the hands of just a few people, but then you have others who have to vote, and there has to be a 2/3 majority in order for these people to be removed. So I feel the solution is right there in our constitution, and then we can just amend it by making some of these removal processes subject to some of the other articles in the Constitution, as I've said. For example, adding Article 151 to 146, so that the removal will not be merely after the petition and the recommendation, but you also have people having to vote in order for this removal to be done. The same for the appointment. When the person is proposed, they can be put to a vote by a council of sorts, something like the Judicial Council, but not the Judicial Council per se. So the appointment would be by the vote of not the whole country. Okay. Because I suppose we haven't reached there yet, but maybe in the future we can have that. So the appointment should be by vote by a recommended body. The removal should be by vote by a recommended body. with a high voting threshold, which they are at least 2/3.
So Kwame, I appreciate your time. He is a key spokesperson for the CPP. But Haruna Mohammed, stay with me. I want your reaction to the next story I'm about to do. I know that...
Okay, I'll stay with you.
Please stay with me. The NDC chairman, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, is not ruling out the possibility of running for president himself. Just 6 months into President Mahama's administration, subtle signs of a power struggle over who succeeds him are beginning to surface within the ruling NDC. While this is expected, given that President Mahama is constitutionally barred from seeking re-election, Asiedu Nketia is urging party members and interested groups to tread carefully. Speaking on PM Express, he issued a caution to all prospective presidential hopeful within the party, emphasizing the need for unity and restraint as the secession conversation quietly takes shape.
Have robust structures that will help us choose the next flag bearer.
Robust structures. Which structures? Is it the grassroots all the way to the...
Yes, the grassroots all the way to the presidential primaries. And we'll get the next flag bearer. We've been learning lessons and improving our processes since the formation of the party. So I have no doubt in my mind at all about the fact that we'll pull through the next primaries peacefully.
You say they must know who wants to contest first. Does Asiedu Nketia want to contest?
We are not there yet. We are not there yet because we have responsibilities to undertake. And I've always been cautioning that there are certain things you don't do at certain times. For instance, we are trying to put ourselves together as a government to run the country and to discharge our obligations and as deliver on our promises and so on. So immediately after you win elections, if you begin talking about who will be or how you are going to win the next elections, it could mean an insult to the population because they will take you to mean that, after all, you are not interested in delivering on your promises at all, and that your objective is to win elections and govern. So, having won election, you have achieved your objective. So you are now thinking about achieving the next objective. So it is offensive to the population.
Well, Haruna, let me wrap up with you. Just get your brief thoughts on this. Is the NPP threatened by the next crop of leaders that may be taking over the reins for the NDC?
Come in. Please come in. I didn't hear you.
I wanted to find out if the NPP is threatened by the next crop of leaders that may be taking over reins in the NDC.
Next crop of leaders.
Yes.
Is the NDC doing elections?
Certainly not. But I'm sure you've seen Musa Dankwa's polls.
Is it because Asiedu Nketia is beginning to demonstrate his frontline presidential ambition, or you think he's exiting from the place?
Well, you could say that. He's not ruling that out completely, but he hasn't come out. He couldn't come out outrightly to say that. He is not ruling that out completely. But as a political party, are you threatened, really?
No, because I cannot be threatened on nothing. Are they going for elections? Have you seen people coming out to say they want to contest for chairman, general secretary? Why will I be threatened by the air? I have to be threatened by substance. So we are not threatened. How can a liberal democratic party such as MPP be threatened by air? We should be threatened by personality. And nobody is contesting in NDC. So why are we threatened?
You're not threatened if somebody like Asiedu Nketia becomes a flag bearer of the party?
Why are we going to be threatened? We've beaten Asiedu Nketia in 2016 elections. We've beaten him again in 2020. He came and beat us in 2024. So he was the chairman. And if he comes as a flag bearer, why are we going to be threatened? There has always been history in this country. And we believe that the MPP have a track record. So we will campaign based on our track record. And also the persons that we bring forward to become flag bearer and lead the party in the 2028 elections will be the trump card of the party and the ideology and principle of the party. So I don't think that if Asiedu Nketia become a flag bearer should be a threat to us. We all know his inconsistencies when we went to court in 2012. We all know. We've known him in parliament. We've known him as a minister. We've known him as a general secretary. We know him as a chairman. So there is no cons. We don't fear. We are just putting our best foot forward on the 31st of January, and we wait the NDC to resolve their matters and bring somebody else.
I appreciate your time here on the Pulse, Deputy General Secretary of the MPP, Haruna Mohammed. But let me bring in Musa Dankwa to join the conversation here as we just look at who is next in line when it comes to the NDC and taking over the reins of power. We appreciate your time here on the Pulse. I know that you conducted some research on Johnson Asiedu Nketia's popularity within the NDC. Now that he has hinted at it, let me go through your key findings just to set the tone for the conversation. Run us through some of the key things you found.
Right. Thank you very much for having me. If you look at the last poll that we did, in fact, there was no indication any of the people we mentioned were going to contest.
Okay.
I think this is the first time we've heard unofficially Asiedu Nketia saying he has interest in running. So if you look at the poll we did last time, which included all the possible candidates we had, led by Denano Opoku on 25%, Haruna Idrisu was on 20.7%, Atufosin on 12.9%,
okay,
Ablakwa on 9.9%, and Johnson Asiedu Nketia on 9.8%. Ezenato 6.3%, Milos Deborah 4.9%. Let me just end with these kind of key contenders.
Okay.
Now, none of these people have said they were contesting. So far, we've not heard anything from any of these people.
Okay.
But the public is speculating because they know that regardless of the poll list, the person who will lead NDC would come from this bunch. So whether they declare or not, the public is allowed to express their views. And what we have done so far is the public perception of who they think should lead NDC. Now, that was April. We are concluding our June-July poll, which will come out next week. We are yet to see what will happen in the race now that we've taken out Jinana Opoku for simple reason that she may not contest because of health reasons.
Interesting. But what was the sample size you used to conduct this research, really?
No, this sample was about 7,500 across the entire country. And indeed, the views are not just views of NDC, but also MPP voters, floating voters, and indeed all other Ghanaians. We want to know who they prefer to lead, because that will give you an indication as to how they may vote if their choices are given to them.
And this new survey, you're already doing it? Is already, like you've sent individuals
it's almost
on the ground
done.
already?
It should come out next week, I think 2nd July or so.
I see. So we're looking forward to that. And if this survey is anything to go by, then we know the individuals who are most popular within the party and what that would mean for the next phase of leadership for the NDC. We appreciate your time here on the Pulse. Well, away from that, NDC chairman Asiedu Nketia, we know, has reaffirmed the party's position, stating that the NDC fully supports the election of metropolitan, municipal and district chief executives as part of efforts to deepen local governance and accountability. Let's listen to him.
A decision to make whether MMDCs ought to be elected. And that is different from another decision. If they have to be elected, are they going to be elected on their own, or they are going to be sponsored by political parties? So there are two different decisions. As far as I know, the MPP was pushing for election of MMDCs on partisan basis. And that was where we departed from them. We think that there's a significant opinion that MMDCs ought to be elected. As to whether they ought to be elected on partisan basis is another thing. So we stand for election on individual merit. And MPP thinks that we should elect on partisan basis.
Well, let me bring in a local governance expert, James Mensah, just to get his thoughts on this. It's about time we're hearing from Asiedu Nketia fully supporting the election of MMDCs. Let me take your thoughts on this. Is that the way to go moving forward? So James,
Hello.
you have to unmute for me to hear you clearly. I can hear you now, loud and clear.
Yes.
I just wanted to pick your thoughts.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Good afternoon.
On the station. So I think that election of MMDCs is probably one of the best options that we could have as a country, because it actually enhances accountability, deepens democracy at the local level. However, there's also another side to it. The side to it is about whether we should have it on partisan basis or non-partisan basis. Theoretically, having it on non-partisan basis would have been the best option, so that the MMDCs are accountable to the local people. But others are also looking at it from another perspective because of the political system of Ghana. And because for a lot of people, because our country is a bit partisan, they are looking at it from the perspective that what of if we elect and somebody who is elected is in quotes from a different political party, what would happen? So that's where the challenge is. Otherwise, electing our MMDC is the best option for us now.
But is that going to help us moving forward, especially when we cannot rule out the fact that once we open the floodgates for it to be an electoral process, there would certainly be political undertones where we have key political parties sponsoring individuals to go for this?
Thank you. So that is where the issue actually comes in. So if we make it non-partisan, it means that no party can actually sponsor anybody. In theory, no party can sponsor
in theory, but not in actual fact.
Yes, because we are just learning from the district assembly elections, where assembly members are supposed to be elected on non-partisan basis, right?
Yeah.
But in practice, it's not open. We can't see it openly, but we know undertones. Political parties do sponsor people. So probably the same thing may repeat if we want to elect our MMDCs. So what we can actually do going forward is to try to be very clear about this in terms of, first, can we get some document or some policy that is going to at least help us mitigate some disagreement that are likely to come, because a disagreement between maybe a central government, the president, and then the chief executive at the local level, because the chief executive now feels that he am accountable to my people, not to the president, because I was not appointed by the president. So going forward, yes, we can elect, but we must be sure to put up some mitigative measures to ensure clear legal mandates between what the chief executive can do and then how the president can also, what the president can instruct, and also if there are disputes, what will be the dispute resolution mechanism that will be put in place to ensure that where a perceived person is, or somebody is perceived to be in a different party from where the president also is from, so that we can deal with some of these things. I think that is the way we can deal with this situation, because it will likely come up.
I appreciate your time here on The Pulse. Mr. James Mensah is a local governance expert. Now let's